Hello and welcome to Stories in Life. Here we share real and emotional stories that touch the heart, make you think, and sometimes even change the way you see the world. If you love deep, meaningful life experiences, subscribe now and join our community. Your support helps us bring you even more powerful stories that inspire, move, and stay with you long after the video ends. So, sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story together. I woke up a few minutes before my alarm clock. The October sun was just beginning to filter through the gap between the heavy curtains. I quietly slipped out from under the covers, trying not to disturb Robert. He was sleeping, turned toward the wall. His breathing was even and calm. For a moment I gazed at his familiar profile, memorized down to every line. High forehead, straight nose with a barely noticeable bump, a touch of gray at his temples. 23 years together. He should trim those temples, I noted automatically, carefully closing the bedroom door behind me. In the kitchen, I put the kettle on and went to the window. Morning Chicago was waking up. Below, in the courtyard of our old 5-story building, early passers-by flickered by. Mrs. Peterson was walking her pug. The janitor Rodriguez was already sweeping fallen leaves. An ordinary Saturday morning in early October, which was special for me. I had long planned this surprise, to drive to the cabin where Robert and I hadn't been together for more than 2 months. Lately he'd been avoiding it. Work, fatigue, bad weather. But before, every Saturday from spring to late fall, we would definitely get away to our place in the suburbs. This cabin, inherited from Robert's parents, was our family nest, a place where every corner held memories. I smiled, remembering how little Tommy, just a toddler, chased butterflies among the apple trees, how Sarah did her homework on the old terrace, laying her notebooks on the worn table, how Robert and I sat under the stars, sipping wine and dreaming about the children's future. I shook my head, pushing away the memories. I had to get everything done before he woke up. Today Robert would go to the cabin alone. He said he needed to close up for the season, get everything ready for winter, and I would surprise him. I'd follow with lunch and wine. I quickly washed up, threw on my house robe, and started cooking. First, beef stew according to my mother-in-law Patricia's recipe. God rest her soul. Cutting vegetables, I remembered how she, an authoritative but fair woman, taught me, a young daughter-in-law, the secrets of family life. The way to a man's heart is through his stomach, Valerie. And my Alexander, like his son, loves hearty stew most of all. When the vegetables were already simmering in the pot, filling the kitchen with aroma, I mixed dough for apple pie. This pie was always my signature dish at the cabin, with cinnamon, vanilla, and apples from our own garden. At 8:30, having put the dough in the refrigerator, I quickly got dressed and ran to the store. At the wine shop on the corner of our street, I chose a bottle of Merlot without hesitation. Exactly the same wine we drank on our 20th wedding anniversary. The price was steep, $40. But was it too much for my beloved husband? The saleswoman Gladys, who had known me for many years, nodded approvingly. Good choice, Valerie. Special occasion. Just decided to treat Robert, I said. I felt my cheeks flush, as if I were a girl and not a 45-year-old woman. Returning home, I found that Robert was already up and making coffee. Good morning. He briefly kissed my cheek. You're up early today. Felt like baking a pie, I shrugged, discreetly hiding the wine bag in the cupboard. Robert nodded without showing much interest and buried his nose in his phone. This had also become a habit in recent months. Before, Saturday mornings began with long embraces, unhurried breakfast together. Now he was always looking at the screen, and if I came close, he immediately locked his phone. Sighing, I returned to my preparations. While Robert was getting ready for the cabin, I managed to finish the pie and complete the stew. Marital intuition, honed over the years, suggested something was wrong. Too many oddities lately. Late nights at work, this new cologne by Dolce & Gabbana that I didn't buy, sudden passion for the gym. Before he used to mock gym rats, and now twice a week he goes to get in shape. Stop it, I pulled myself up, ladling stew into a large family thermos. Don't overthink it. The man has a complex project, Riverside Heights, huge responsibility. That's why he's nervous. My thoughts were interrupted by my husband's voice. I'm leaving, Val. I'll be back tomorrow around noon, probably. He stood in the kitchen doorway, fit, freshly shaved, in the new shirt I'd given him for his birthday. He smelled of that cologne. Maybe I'll come with you, I suddenly asked, though this would ruin the whole surprise plan. Something flickered in Robert's eyes, annoyance, fear, but then disappeared. Val, what would you do there? I'll be working, you know the roof leaked after the rains. Windows need to be sealed. Deadly boring. I could help. Next time, okay? He kissed me again, now on the lips, but somehow hurriedly, formally. All right, I'm off. When the door closed behind him, I slowly took off my apron and sat at the kitchen table. My heart ached unpleasantly. Why didn't he want me to come with him? Before, our cabin was a place where we rested our souls, weeded beds together, grilled together, sat on the porch together watching the sunset. I'm getting old, I suddenly thought, looking at my hands with protruding veins. Maybe he's just bored with me. I got up and went to the mirror in the hallway. From the mirror, a tired woman with first wrinkles, barely noticeable gray in her chestnut hair, looked back at me, but still a beautiful woman. Damn it. Robert always said I looked like young Audrey Hepburn. Shaking myself, I returned to my plan. The surprise would happen whether Robert wanted it or not. By 10 o'clock, all preparations were complete. The thermos with stew was reliably wrapped in a towel. Apple pie was packed in a special basket. The bottle of Merlot was wrapped in festive paper. I even stopped at the flower shop and bought one red rose. Let it be a symbol of our love. Changing into Robert's favorite dress, dark blue with a wrap style that, in his words, particularly flattered my figure, I took my grandmother's ring from the jewelry box, antique with a ruby from the early 20th century. The only thing I had left from my grandmother, who replaced my mother after that terrible accident. Grandmother always said, "Wear it when you want to tell your beloved's heart something important." This stone knows how to keep words that are hard to say aloud. Today I wanted to tell my husband many things. That I still loved him despite the fatigue of 23 years of married life. That I saw his distance but was ready to fight for our happiness. That family isn't just routine and habit, but the ability to discover something new in each other again and again. One last look in the mirror, a light touch of lipstick, a drop of perfume on my wrist. Time to go. The drive to the suburbs took a little over an hour. I drove my old Honda Civic carefully, anticipating the joy of meeting. Outside the window, autumn landscapes flowed by. Golden birches, crimson maples, thinning groves. Our cabin was on the outskirts of the village. Half an acre of land, an old but solid house with an attic, outbuildings, and 23 rose bushes that Robert planted each anniversary of our wedding, one after another. I wondered if the 24th would take root next year. Turning onto the familiar dirt road, I felt my heart beating faster. Just a little more and I'd see him, hug him. Maybe together we'd remember how important we are to each other. But near the cabin, a surprise awaited me. The gate was ajar. Strange. Robert always locked it. And next to his black Toyota stood an unfamiliar car, a silver Hyundai Sonata. A colleague stopped by. Nicholas from the neighboring house. I thought, but a bad feeling squeezed my chest. I slowly got out of the car, holding bags of food and wine. From the porch came voices, male and female. I stopped for a moment, took a deep breath of cool autumn air, and resolutely headed to the house. The gate squeaked quietly as I pushed it with my hand. The bags weighed down my arms. Thermos with stew in one, pie and wine in the other. A strange feeling didn't leave me, as if I were an uninvited guest in my own home. Steps along the familiar path to the porch suddenly became uncertain, as if the ground was slipping from under my feet. The house was warm. Robert always lit the fireplace first thing. This habit remained from childhood when Grandma Anna taught him, a 10-year-old boy, to stack logs crisscross. On the veranda, I took off my jacket, put the bags on the bench, and headed to the kitchen. What I saw made me freeze. On the table stood dirty dishes, 2 plates with remains of scrambled eggs, 2 coffee cups, half-eaten toast with jam. Next to them, an open pack of expensive cigarettes. Dunhill. Robert hadn't smoked for 3 years. He quit after talking to the cardiologist. And an ashtray with 2 butts, one of which had bright lipstick. Maybe the neighbors stopped by. Nicholas with Mary. A saving thought flashed, but I didn't believe it myself. Mary didn't smoke, and she wouldn't wear such garish lipstick. At that moment, a sound came from upstairs. Female laughter, clear, ringing. Then Robert's voice. Couldn't make out the words, but the intonation. So tender, so intimate. And again laughter. My legs became cotton. I leaned against the countertop so I wouldn't fall. Somewhere deep in my soul, hope still flickered. There had to be an explanation. I just needed to go up and check. The wooden staircase to the second floor, which Robert and I had painted last spring in warm walnut color, now seemed endless. Each step was like a new blow to the heart. The voices became clearer. "And what did you tell her?" A female voice, young with a light hoarseness. "Said I was busy at the cabin, closing for the season," Robert replied. "That I'd be back tomorrow." And she believed. Of course, she always believes. The last phrase pierced me through. An icy wave rose from my heels to my throat, cutting off my breath. She always believes. These 3 words destroyed 23 years of life in an instant. The door to the bedroom was ajar. Exactly to the bedroom. Our marital bedroom with a wide bed we bought 5 years ago for our anniversary. With a patchwork quilt I sewed by hand, with a photo of our children on the nightstand. I pushed the door open. They were sitting on the bed with rumpled sheets, pillows scattered. Robert, my husband, half dressed in jeans and an unbuttoned shirt. And next to him, a young red-haired woman in a silk robe that barely covered her thighs. In our bed, on the nightstand, 2 glasses and an empty bottle of martini. Time stopped. I stood in the doorway, not feeling my body, feeling nothing but emptiness that was growing inside, swallowing everything. Pain, hurt, anger. Only cold, freezing, all-penetrating. "Val." Robert jumped up, panic on his face. "This isn't what you think." The woman sharply pulled the robe tighter, covering herself. In her wide green eyes I read fear. My hands unclenched on their own. The bottle of Merlot I had brought crashed to the wooden floor with a bang. Dark red liquid spread like blood, staining the boards we had sanded with such difficulty last summer. "Val, listen." Robert stepped toward me, extending his hand. "This is just a misunderstanding. Ellen is a relative, she." I recoiled, not letting him touch me. In my head pounded a single thought. "Run, quickly run from here." "Valerie, wait!" he shouted after me, but I was already running down the stairs, jumping over steps. In the kitchen, I grabbed my purse and car keys. Behind me, I heard Robert's hurried steps. He was trying to explain something, grabbing my shoulders, but I didn't hear the words. Only buzzing in my ears and the frantic beating of my own heart. "Let go." My voice sounded alien. "Don't touch me." I broke free and ran out of the house. The last thing I remember was his confused face in the doorway and the red-haired woman standing on the top step of the stairs. I don't remember how I started the car, how I got on the highway. Tears blurred my vision, but I raced, not watching the road. Only when the speedometer showed 70 miles per hour did my consciousness clear a little. Can't crash. I have children. They shouldn't suffer because their father. I sharply pulled over to the shoulder and turned off the engine. And then it broke through. Sobs shook my whole body. I screamed, pounded the steering wheel, the seat, unable to release the pain that was tearing me apart from inside. She always believes. The phone in my purse rang incessantly. "Robert." I didn't answer. Let him choke on his excuses. Let him drown in his lies. I don't know how long I sat on the shoulder. When the tears dried up, I just stared at one point, at an old birch on the edge of the field that swayed in the October wind. Strangely, I felt kinship with this tree. Just as lonely, just as open to all winds. Fragments of thoughts raced through my head. 23 years together, children, apartment, property, where to go, what to do next, how to live. My fingers automatically reached for grandmother's ring on my finger. This stone knows how to keep words that are hard to say aloud. Now I had nothing to say to Robert. All words had turned to ash. I started the car and slowly pulled onto the highway. I couldn't go home. Not now. I needed shelter, a place to wait out the storm, gather my thoughts. On the way to the city, I stopped at a roadside cafe to wash my face, drink water. In the bathroom, looking at my reflection in the cracked mirror, swollen eyes, smeared mascara, pale lips, I suddenly felt a surge of anger at myself for blindness, for trustfulness. She always believes. Half an hour later, parked at a shopping center, I opened my laptop right in the car and started looking for housing. There was some money on the card. Not much, but enough for starters. A short-term rental site showed several options. I chose the most modest, a one-bedroom apartment in the suburbs for $60 a night. The landlady, an elderly woman with tired eyes, gave me the keys without unnecessary questions. The apartment turned out to be small but clean. Sofa, wardrobe, table, TV, microwave in the kitchen. Windows faced a busy avenue, but I didn't care. Leaving my things, I went to the nearest grocery store. I bought the essentials: toothbrush and paste, shampoo, change of underwear, tea, bread, cheese, sausage, dumplings. At the checkout, an indifferent cashier rang up a bill for $75. The phone continued to ring with calls. I turned it off. Returning to the apartment, I stood under the hot shower for a long time, as if trying to wash away not only the touch of this day but all 23 years of married life. Then, wrapped in a scratchy foreign towel, I sat on the windowsill with a cup of strong tea and watched the evening city. At that moment, it seemed to me that life was over. Everything that was dear, everything that gave meaning, turned out to be a lie. I felt like an abandoned boat that had been carried away from shore into the open sea. No oars, no sail, no compass. Unexpectedly, I fell asleep right in the chair with a cup in my hands. I woke up from the phone vibrating, a short SMS signal. Turning on the phone, I saw 47 missed calls from Robert and 2 messages. The first: "Val, please pick up. We need to talk." The second came just now. "Val, this isn't what you think. Ellen is the daughter of Mom's cousin from Portland. She has problems with her husband. I'm just helping. Please call." I read the message several times. Inside, a new wave rose. Not pain, not hurt, but cold, piercing rage. He was still lying. After everything, he continued to lie. I turned off the phone and lay on the hard sofa, covering myself with an old blanket. Outside the window, the evening city was noisy, alien, indifferent to my troubles. And somewhere there, 40 miles away in our cabin, my husband was probably still comforting his relative with family problems. The night in the strange apartment turned out to be endless. I tossed until dawn, falling into heavy oblivion and surfacing again into reality that was worse than any nightmare. Around 5 in the morning, I finally threw off the blanket and sat on the edge of the sofa, hugging my knees. Outside the window, gray October dawn was beginning to break. Rain monotonously drummed on the cornice, blurring the outlines of houses across the street. The weather perfectly matched my condition. Dank, joyless, hopeless. In my head, like a broken record, fragments of yesterday's scenes spun. Red hair on the pillow, rumpled sheets, broken bottle, liquid spreading across the floor. And his words: "She always believes." Yes, I believed. Always unconditionally. Even when intuition suggested something was wrong. I remembered the September business trip to Denver. Robert returned lively, with some inner glow I hadn't seen in a long time, brought me expensive French perfume by Givenchy. Too expensive for his usual gifts. Then I was happy, deciding it was a new turn in our relationship. And that note I found in his jacket pocket when I was going to take things to the dry cleaner. A scrap of paper with a phone number and the letters EK. He said then, "It's a client's contact, need to call about the project." Believe. Most offensive was that our son Tommy was the first to suspect something was wrong. My 22-year-old son accidentally saw his father in a Starbucks with some woman. Young, bright, in a business suit. He told me that evening. Dad introduced her as a colleague Ellen, but they sat somehow not businesslike. Robert then laughed at his son's suspiciousness. What are you thinking, Tommy? We have a joint project with TechBuild. Normal business meeting. And those sudden gym visits, new shirts, changed habits, morning shower with expensive gel. Before, he was content with regular soap and ironically talked about men who fuss with bottles like women. Everything was before my eyes. I just didn't want to see. Around 10 in the morning, the phone rang. I looked at the screen for a long time before answering. Bobby Heartsuit appeared on the display. Once I had entered the heart next to his name in contacts myself. Val, finally. His voice sounded agitated. Where are you? I didn't sleep all night. I was looking for you. Don't, Robert. My voice was dry and lifeless. Don't lie. I'm not lying. Listen, you misunderstood everything. Ellen really is my acquaintance, but everything isn't as it looks. She's the wife of my colleague Andrew from the design department. They have family problems. Yesterday you wrote that she was your mom's cousin's daughter from Portland. I almost physically felt bitterness rising to my throat. He clearly didn't expect me to notice the discrepancy in his versions. Yes, I just didn't want to go into details in the message. He tried to wiggle out. She really is from Portland, but through Dad's line and married to. Enough. I couldn't stand it. Just enough, Robert. I need time to think. Don't call me. I hung up and turned off the phone. My hands were shaking. The day dragged slowly. I wandered around the tiny apartment, turning the kettle on and off, unable to concentrate even on the simplest actions. There was fog in my head. Somewhere deep in my heart, hope still flickered. What if there was an explanation for everything? What if this really was a misunderstanding? Around 2 in the afternoon, I turned on the phone again. Immediately, notifications came about missed calls and messages from Robert. Before I could read them, the phone rang. Val, I'm begging you, hear me out. His voice sounded almost desperate. I'll explain everything. Ellen, she's in a difficult situation. She has depression, understand. Her husband beats her. She was looking for protection. In your bed? Asked coldly. No, there was nothing between us. She just came early in the morning, was very upset. I suggested she rest. I hung up again. Hours ticked by, changing minutes. Outside the window it was getting dark. October days are short. Thoughts in my head spun in a closed circle. Suddenly I realized I couldn't sit within 4 walls. I needed to air out, breathe. Robert's call came when I was already approaching the car. Valerie. His voice now sounded irritated. This is a misunderstanding. I don't know why you're making a mountain out of a molehill. This woman is a distant relative. She ran away from her alcoholic husband, asked to be sheltered for a couple of days. Robert, I interrupted him, suddenly feeling strange calm. In one day she was your mom's sister's daughter, and your colleague's wife, and a relative through Dad's line, and now again a relative but distant. Make up your mind about the version. I hung up without waiting for an answer. The decision came unexpectedly. I would drive to the cabin right now. Collect my things, take what belonged to me. Most likely they weren't there anymore, but I had to go back there to put an end to it. The road to the suburbs took longer because of the snowfall that had begun, the first this year. Large flakes settled on the windshield. The wipers barely coped. The landscape outside the window was drearily gray. Trees had already shed their leaves. Bare branches blackened against the twilight sky. Approaching the village, I was relieved to see that Robert's car wasn't there. So he had left. I parked and headed to the gate when I heard a shout. Valerie, how good that you stopped by. It was our neighbor Mary, a full woman of about 60, with kind eyes and an eternally tied scarf. She was hurrying to me through her plot, shifting a heavy bag from hand to hand. Hello, Mary. I tried to smile, but my lips wouldn't obey. "Oh dear, are you unwell?" Her eyes anxiously peered into my face. "So pale." "Just tired." I looked away. "Came to pick up some things. And I've been waiting for you since yesterday." She suddenly blurted out. "Wanted to warn you. It's about her." She lowered her voice, though there was no one around. "The redhead. She's not the first time coming. I thought she was your relative, but then I accidentally heard how they were talking on the veranda. Last weekend. I felt the ground leaving from under my feet. Last weekend, when Robert told me he was going fishing with colleagues. Forgive me for interfering." Mary guiltily looked down. "But I see something's wrong. She's been here 3 or 4 times in the last month. Always comes in her own car. Silver foreign car. Hyundai Sonata," I said mechanically. "Yes, that's it. Dresses expensively, you can see she has money, and laughs all the time, just gushes." "What depression is that?" "Depression?" Shuddered. "Well, yes," the neighbor nodded. "Yesterday I accidentally heard Robert telling you on the phone that she has depression, that her husband hurts her." "Nothing like that. Cheerful as a bird, and dressed to the nines." I thanked Mary, barely restraining trembling, and went to the house. The lock on the door had been changed. My key didn't fit. And this after 23 years of marriage, I thought with bitter irony. Returning to the city, I went home to our apartment downtown. Opening the door with my key, I first headed to the bedroom. In the jewelry box that stood on the dressing table was grandmother's ring. My most valuable possession, which I hadn't taken to the cabin yesterday, wearing a cheap copy instead. The ring was in place. I exhaled with relief, put it on my finger, and suddenly remembered yesterday's scene. The red-haired woman, when she jumped up from the bed, nervously pulling down her robe, automatically adjusted something on her finger. Something that flashed. Sudden guess made me go cold. I dialed Robert's number. "Why did you make a copy of my ring?" I asked without preamble when he answered. The silence on the other end was more eloquent than any words. I wanted to make a gift." His voice trembled. "Just a copy as a memento," but she refused. "A ring with a ruby. An exact copy of grandmother's." I felt rage rising inside me. "You gave her a copy of my family heirloom." "Val, everything's not like that." Panic sounded in his voice. "Listen." I turned off the phone. Inside, a feeling I'd never known before was growing. Cold, crystal-clear determination. Enough tears, enough rushing about, enough believing in fairy tales. I dialed my daughter's number. "Sarah, it's Mom. I need you to come. And call Tommy, let him be here too. Tomorrow at 6 in the evening. We need to talk. All together." I hung up and went to the window. Snow was still falling, quiet, peaceful. Tomorrow I would learn the truth. The whole truth. And let Robert try to lie in the presence of our children. Exactly at 6 in the evening, I entered our apartment. Inside it was unusually quiet, with that tense silence that arises before a storm. Taking off my coat in the hallway, I froze for a moment, listening to the muffled voices from the living room. "Mom, you're here." Tommy ran out into the corridor, hugged me tightly. His face was worried. "Where were you?" "We were worried." I needed to think. I stroked my son's cheek. "And why are you here?" "I asked you to come at 6. Dad called." Tommy looked down. "Said you had some misunderstanding, that we needed to find you. Sarah came on the night train." I went to the living room, where I found an unexpected picture. Robert stood by the window with a cup of tea, and Sarah sat in an armchair, arms crossed on her chest. By her pose, by her tense shoulders, I immediately understood. My daughter suspected something. "Mommy," she rushed to me, hugging. "What happened?" "Dad says some strange things." "I don't understand anything." I looked at Robert. He stood with lowered eyes, but tension could be felt in his posture, ready to defend himself. "Let's all sit down." I tried to make my voice sound calm. We settled in the living room, the children and I on the sofa, Robert in the chair opposite. Strangely, I felt no fear or awkwardness. Only fatigue and the desire to end the farce that had lasted too long. "Children," Robert began, getting ahead of me. "Mom misunderstood the situation. There was an unfortunate misunderstanding." "Let me tell what I saw," I interrupted him. "On Saturday I came to the cabin with a surprise for Dad and found him in bed with a young woman." Sarah gasped, covering her mouth with her palm. Tommy jumped up, clenching his fists. "Dad, is this true?" My son's eyes darkened. "Everything's not like that." Robert spread his hands. "Yes, Ellen was at the cabin, but there's nothing between us. Ellen Crawford, wife of my colleague Andrew from the design department. They have family problems. Her husband raises his hand to her. I'm just helping her as a friend." "In your and Mom's bedroom?" Sarah asked sharply. "Why have we never heard of her?" "I didn't want to bother you with other people's family problems." Robert nervously rubbed the bridge of his nose. "It's a delicate situation." "Wait." Tommy sat on the edge of the sofa. "Is this by any chance that redhead I saw you with in the cafe in September?" "Yes." Robert nodded. "We were discussing how to help her legally." I silently listened to this lie, watching how the children, my smart, perceptive children, gradually began to see their father in his true light. There was no need to add anything. Robert was digging his own grave with every word. "And why did you change the lock at the cabin?" I asked calmly. "What?" He clearly didn't expect such a question. "The old one broke, the key was sticking." "And why did the neighbor see this woman at our cabin 3 or 4 times in the last month?" Continued. "On those weekends when you supposedly went fishing with colleagues." Robert paled. Heavy silence hung in the room. "Dad, tell the truth." Sarah stared at her father. "We're not children anymore." Robert opened his mouth to answer, but at that moment his phone, lying on the coffee table, rang. Ellen appeared on the screen. Everyone froze, looking at the phone. No one moved. Robert reached for the receiver, but Sarah was faster. She grabbed the phone and, before her father could do anything, turned on speakerphone. "Yes," she said, looking her father in the eyes. "Bobby," a female voice rang out, bright and young. "Where are you?" "I've been waiting for an hour at our cafe. I have a surprise for you." "This isn't Robert," Sarah replied calmly. "This is his daughter." The pause on the other end was so long I thought the connection had broken. "Daughter?" the woman finally asked. Genuine amazement could be heard in her voice. "Robert has children. But he's divorced." Sarah looked at her father with such pain that my heart clenched. "No," she said slowly. "My parents have been married 23 years. Until yesterday." The line went dead. Grim silence reigned in the room. Tommy stared at the floor, Sarah directly at her father. It seemed to me that my daughter had aged 10 years in those few minutes. "Well then," Robert ran his hand over his face. "Now you know everything." "Not everything," Tommy said quietly. "How long has this been going on?" Robert sighed. "For months," he admitted. "I met Ellen at a project presentation. She works at Tech Build, our partner company. Got confused. She's young, cheerful, easy to be with. But I was going to break up with her really," he added. "That's why I made a copy of Mom's ring." Sarah raised her eyebrows. "Dad, do you even understand what you've done? You can't judge me." Robert suddenly flared up. "You don't know what it's like to feel that life is passing you by, that you're stuck in routine, that ahead is only old age." "Enough." I raised my hand, stopping this flow of self-justification. "Children, leave us with Dad for a minute, please." Sarah and Tommy exchanged glances but obediently went to the kitchen. When the door closed behind them, I turned to Robert. "Pack your things." "What?" He looked at me with bewilderment. "You heard. Pack your things and leave. Today." "Val, you can't just take and throw me out of my own home," he protested. "This is my apartment," I reminded him. "Inherited from my parents. Now get out." "You'll regret this," he hissed through his teeth. "You're nobody without me, Val." A housewife without education, without career, without... Nobody, I repeated quietly. Go to your Ellen who doesn't know you have children. Tell her what a caring father you are. Something in my voice made him fall silent. He got up and silently went to the bedroom. 20 minutes later he returned with a suitcase and sports bag. Sarah and Tommy came out of the kitchen when he was already standing in the hallway. I'll call, he told the children, not looking at me. We'll talk without emotions. This is all a misunderstanding. We'll work everything out. No one answered. The front door slammed. Only when Robert's steps died away on the stairs did I allow myself to sink into a chair in the hallway. My legs wouldn't hold me. Mommy. Sarah knelt next to me, hugged me. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Forgive him, please. There's nothing to forgive, Tommy replied quietly, sitting on the other side. Dad chose his own path. I looked at my children, so adult, so understanding, and felt strange relief. As if the weight I'd been carrying without realizing it had finally fallen from my shoulders. I'm filing for divorce, I said, wiping my daughter's tears. The decision is final. They didn't argue. We just sat together, holding hands, while twilight thickened outside the window. Our family would never be the same, but maybe it was even better this way. Snow fell in large flakes, covering the city with a white blanket. I stood by the window in the notary's office, looking at the pre-holiday bustle below. December had always been a time of waiting for a miracle, a time of summing up. For me, this December became the month of final farewell to the past. Valerie, sign here and here. The notary's voice brought me back to reality. I approached the table and signed the property division agreement. Robert sat opposite, haggard, aged. In his eyes was a mixture of guilt and relief. So the apartment and cabin go entirely to you, the notary summarized. And Robert's personal property to him. Do I understand correctly? We nodded in unison. The division turned out to be surprisingly simple and peaceful. Robert didn't claim the real estate, recognizing that the apartment was mine before marriage, and we decided to sell the cabin. Too many heavy memories were connected with it. The children supported this decision. The divorce process through the courthouse took only a month. We filed a mutual consent application, without claims against each other. No scandals, no public scenes. As if all the pain and rage had burned out during those few days in October, leaving only ashes. Robert rented an apartment in the suburbs. On his own initiative, he offered to split his salary in half for household maintenance. The children were already adults, so there was no question of support payments. But this gesture from him was important, not so much because of the money, but as an acknowledgement of responsibility. Val, Robert caught up with me at the exit from the notary's office. I wanted to ask, how are things with work? Looking, I shrugged. After 20 years off, it's not easy. Maybe I could help. We have an opening at the company. No, thank you. I gently but firmly interrupted him. I'll manage on my own. And I really was managing day by day. I sent out resumes, went to interviews, updated my knowledge. My economics degree from 1998 had huge gaps. Internet marketing, electronic document flow, accounting programs. All this was Chinese to me. In mid-January, persistence paid off. A small firm, Bookkeep Pro, agreed to take me as a trainee accountant. Modest salary, $3,000 during the probationary period. But it was a good start. Valerie, you'll have to learn a lot, warned Tamara, the company director. But you have basic education and, more importantly, the desire to work. The rest can be learned. I'll never forget my first day of work. A mixture of fear, excitement, and strange euphoria. I can do this, I kept telling myself, looking at the unfamiliar interface of QuickBooks. I'll manage. And I was managing little by little each day. I stayed late, watched training videos, asked colleagues questions, and in February spent $1,500 of my savings on professional development courses. Robert, learning about this, tried to reimburse the expenses, but I refused. These were my investments in myself. Life was gradually getting back on track. Tommy moved in with me from the dorm to help, as he said, though I suspected my son just wanted to support me during the difficult time. Every evening we had dinner together, discussed news. His stories about university, tutoring jobs, plans to enter graduate school brought back my sense of normalcy. Sarah also didn't leave me without attention. She called every day, came from Boston on weekends. Once at the end of February, she came with special news. "Mom, Igor and I decided it's time for you to become a grandmother," she announced at dinner, looking at me slyly. "What do you mean?" I didn't understand right away. "You want to already," she smiled. 12 weeks. Due in September. I cried, for the first time in those months, not from grief, but from happiness. The thought that I would become a grandmother filled me with new energy. While Tommy opened champagne for us and juice for Sarah, I thought about how amazingly everything was working out. The end of one story was becoming the beginning of another. That same evening, when the children had already gone to bed, my friend Lisa called. "Valerie," her voice sounded worried. "Tomorrow some Ellen wants to see you at Starbucks on Main Street. Says it's important." My heart skipped a beat. Ellen. That same redhead I'd found with Robert. Why did she want to meet? What else could she say? "Tell her I'll come," I decided after a pause. The meeting was set for 2 in the afternoon. I arrived right on time. A habit of punctuality, developed over a month of work. Ellen was already sitting at a table by the window. Indeed bright, with lush red hair, delicate facial features. Younger than me by about 15 years, no more. "Thank you for coming," she nervously fidgeted with a napkin. "I wasn't sure. Why did you want to see me?" I sat across from her, trying to speak calmly. "I need to return this to you." She took a small box from her purse. "And say that I didn't know Robert was married." He introduced himself as divorced, a bachelor without children. Opened the box. Inside lay a ring. An exact copy of my grandmother's ring with the ruby. "I guess this wasn't just jewelry," Ellen continued. "Too antique a design, doesn't look like mass market." When I asked where it came from, he said it was a memento from his mother. I silently listened, examining the ring. Robert had ordered a perfect copy. Same cut of the stone, same patterns on the band. Must have cost a fortune. "I'm sorry it turned out this way." Ellen looked directly at me. "But you should know, I wasn't the first." She placed printouts on the table. Screenshots of Robert's correspondence with other women. Marina from accounting, massage therapist Sandra. The messages were full of tenderness, promises, words of love. The same ones I'd heard from him for so many years. "I found out about this by accident," Ellen explained when he left his phone unattended. "I decided you should know the whole truth." "Why now?" "Yes. It's been 4 months since that day. I quit TechBuild, found a job at another company." She lowered her eyes. "I'm no longer afraid of his influence. And besides, you have the right to know." We sat in the cafe for almost 2 hours. Strangely, I felt no hatred toward this woman. She too had been deceived like me. The only difference was that I had lost 23 years, and she only 4 months. I returned home at peace, as if the last piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. Everything finally made sense. The late returns, business trips, new habits. And my life was also finding new meaning. That evening Lisa called. "Well, how are you, friend? Didn't the meeting with her upset you?" On the contrary, I was surprised by my own calm. It felt like a weight was lifted from my soul. Now I know for sure I didn't make a mistake. "Listen, I have an idea." Lisa perked up. "Let's go to the seaside. In March for about a week. Miami. Fresh air, waves. You need a reset, Valerie." "I don't know," I hesitated. "Work, money. You'll get time off from work and money. You sold the cabin. You can't always just save and economize. Come on, decide." Her words made sense. The cabin had indeed been sold for $200,000. Part of the money I set aside for apartment renovation, part for the future grandchild, but I could spend a little on myself. "All right," I decided. "Let's go in March." After hanging up, I went to the window. Light February snow was swirling outside the glass. Below, passers-by hurried past, each with their own business, their own story, their own sorrows and joys. I thought that just recently my life seemed destroyed to the foundation. And now, just 3 months later, I again felt solid ground under my feet. I had a job, children who supported me. Soon there would be a grandchild. I had a friend ready to go with me to the ends of the earth. And most importantly, I had myself, stronger than ever before. The Miami sun caressed my skin, awakening long-forgotten feelings of carefreeness. I sat in a wicker chair on the hotel terrace and watched the ocean merge with the sky at the horizon. Next to me, Lisa leafed through a magazine, occasionally commenting on fashion trends, but I barely listened. Inside, a strange feeling was spreading. For the first time in long months, I was breathing deeply. Our week-long vacation in Miami cost $4,000 for both of us. Not luxury but not budget either. A small hotel 3 minutes from the beach. Breakfast included. Daily walks along the boardwalk. No plans, no rush. Just us, the ocean, and spring that came here earlier than it would back home. On the third day of our stay, Lisa and I settled in a cafe on the boardwalk. The March breeze was fresh but already spring-warm. We ordered seafood and white wine, enjoying the sunset view. "Excuse me, may I join you?" A male voice suddenly rang out. "All the tables are taken." I looked up. Before me stood a tall man of about 50. Silver temples, intelligent eyes behind glasses, a restrained smile. "Please," Lisa nodded, winking at me so the stranger wouldn't notice. He introduced himself as Michael, a cardiologist from Chicago. "What a coincidence," I was surprised. "We're also from Chicago. Fellow countrymen then," he smiled. "And I escaped here for a week's vacation. Come here every March. It's a tradition." The conversation flowed unexpectedly easily. Michael turned out to be an interesting conversationalist, well-read, with a subtle sense of humor. He talked about his work at the cardiac center, his love of classical music, his son who lived in New York. "Are you married?" he asked when Lisa stepped away to take a call. "I was," I answered. "Just divorced 3 months ago after 23 years of marriage." Something flickered in his eyes. Understanding, sympathy, but no pity. "Me too," he nodded. 2 years ago. 18 years of life together. Can't say it was easy. We talked until the cafe closed. The next day we met again, now all three with Lisa, and went on an excursion to the Everglades. Then there was another day and another. Lisa tactfully left us alone, finding museums she urgently needed to visit or stores selling unique fabrics. When it was time to leave, we exchanged contacts. I harbored no illusions. Vacation acquaintances rarely grow into something serious. But the correspondence continued at home too. In mid-April, the phone notified me of a message. The art gallery opened an exhibition of French Impressionists. "Would you like to keep me company?" I agreed, though inside everything clenched with strange anxiety. Wasn't it too soon? Our first official date in Chicago took place at the Opera House, Swan Lake, a classic I'd always loved. Michael met me with a bouquet of lilies of the valley. Not lavish, but elegant. "I think you should like such flowers," he said. Modest, but with character. After the performance, we walked through the evening city for a long time. He didn't try to take my hand, didn't say loud words, just was there, attentive, calm. "I feel you're not ready for a new relationship yet," he said, walking me to the entrance. "And that's normal, Valerie. We have time to figure ourselves out." These words touched me to the depths of my soul. No pressure, no expectations. Just understanding and respect for my space. April brought other changes too. At work, the probationary period ended, and my salary increased to $4,000. Not wealth, of course, but I was proud of every penny earned. For the first time in 20 years, I felt financially independent. Colleagues, mostly women my age and older, supported me, shared experience, gave advice. We often had lunch together, discussing not only work but personal life. I never thought that at 45 I would have new friends. Tommy also brought joy. He successfully defended his thesis, got a recommendation for graduate school, and with it an increased stipend. "Mom, now I can contribute more to the budget," he said proudly. "And soon I'll stop eating you out of house and home completely. Don't even think about moving out." I hugged my son. "I like it when you're nearby." In early May, news came from Sarah. She had an ultrasound, and the doctors were sure it would be a girl. I cried with happiness when I saw the blurry picture on the phone screen. Tiny being my granddaughter. New life. "Igor and I decided to name her Anna," Sarah reported. "After great-grandmother." I immediately started preparing gifts, knitting socks, hats, searching stores for cute baby things. This activity brought such joy that I often caught myself smiling in the middle of the workday. Robert called unexpectedly. We'd barely communicated these months. Only about property division issues or through the children. "Val." His voice sounded unusually soft. "Sarah said they're having a girl. I'd like to be part of her life if you don't mind." We met in a cafe. Calmly, businesslike, without reproaches and memories. "Of course," I said. "You're the grandfather. No one has the right to deprive you of that role. For the children and grandchildren's sake, we should maintain normal relations." He looked at me with surprise, as if not expecting such a reaction, and I suddenly realized that I no longer felt hatred or resentment toward him. Only fatigue and light sadness for what could have been but didn't happen. That evening I took out the jewelry box with grandmother's ring. The ruby glimmered in the desk lamp light. Deep, rich. This stone knows how to keep words that are hard to say aloud. I remembered grandmother's words. I decided that when little Anna grew up, the ring would pass to her. And the copy that Ellen returned, I gave to a charity for children's homes. Let them sell it, get money for something useful. The apartment renovation was almost finished. With the money from selling the cabin, I updated the kitchen and bathroom, replaced the windows. Part of the funds I set aside for my future granddaughter's education. A warm and quiet May evening. Michael and I were walking along the lakefront, watching the sunset sun paint the water in golden tones. "You know," he said, switching to the informal you for the first time, "I often think about us, about what could be." "Me too," I admitted. "But I need time." "Of course," he smiled. "I'm not in a hurry. Maybe in a year or two. When we're ready." "If we're ready." We sat on a bench, looking at the water. The spring breeze played with my hair. "The most amazing thing," I said, "is that I've learned to be happy alone. And only now, it seems, I'm ready to share this happiness with someone else." He simply nodded, understanding without words. That moment the phone rang. "Sarah." "Mom, how are things with Michael?" she asked without preamble. "Tommy says it's getting serious with you too." I smiled, looking at the man next to me. "We're not rushing, sweetie. True love has time." When I hung up, warm calm spread inside me. I suddenly understood a simple truth. The destruction of my former life had become the foundation for a new one. More honest, more conscious. Now I knew that happiness begins with self-love and respect for one's own life. Everything else is just a pleasant addition to this main wisdom. The spring evening enveloped the city in gentle twilight. Ahead was summer, the birth of my granddaughter, new meetings and discoveries. And I was ready for this future, without fear, with an open heart and clear vision. The May evening slowly descended on the city. I sat on the balcony, covered with a warm blanket, watching the last rays of sun paint the rooftops in gentle pink. In my hands steamed a cup of herbal tea. A new habit that appeared after Michael told me about the benefits of lemon balm for the heart. Months. Only 8 months had passed since that October day when I opened the door to the cabin bedroom and saw what changed my life forever. Then it seemed the world had collapsed, that everything was lost, that ahead was only emptiness and pain. How wrong I was. I thought about the path I'd traveled these months. About the first days after the betrayal, when every breath was difficult, about sleepless nights in the rented apartment, about how I gathered the fragments of my broken life one by one slowly, with bleeding fingers. about the first timid steps in new reality, job search, studying independence, about the children's support, without which I might not have managed, and about how gradually pain gave way to something new. First it was simply the absence of pain, then calm, then interest in life, and finally joy. Quiet, mature joy from every day lived, from every personal achievement. A year ago I was a housewife, wife of engineer Robert Anderson, mother of 2 adult children. My life was scheduled years ahead. Care for my husband, meetings with friends over coffee, rare trips to visit my daughter in Boston, measured, predictable existence where I was only my husband's shadow. Now I am Valerie Anderson, accountant at Bookkeep Pro LC, future grandmother, a woman who is learning to love and trust again. A woman who knows the price of betrayal and forgiveness. A woman who found strength to start over at 45. On the table next to me lay my phone. It vibrated quietly. A message from Michael. Looking at the ocean and thinking of you. It's so beautiful here, but something's missing without you. Michael had gone to a cardiologist's conference in Miami. To that very place where we'd met 2 months ago. I smiled and wrote, thinking of you too. Maybe next time we'll go together. Ocean, sun, unhurried breakfasts on the terrace. The answer came instantly. Definitely, let's go. Looking forward to it. I set the phone aside and went back into the apartment. After renovation, it seemed more spacious and brighter. I had consciously changed everything that reminded me of my past life. New wallpaper in the bedroom, new bed. I'd given the old one where Robert and I slept to charity. New curtains, new dishes. Even the old sofa in the living room, where Robert liked to watch football, gave way to an elegant leather sofa in sand color. On the dresser in the bedroom stood photos of the children. Sarah with her rounded belly. In 3 months I would become a grandmother. Tommy in glasses and a strict suit. He'd recently been accepted to graduate school. He was so proud. Next to the photos was the jewelry box with grandmother's ring. I opened it, took out the ring, put it on my finger. The ruby glimmered in the table lamplight, as if keeping the wisdom of generations of women in our family. Wear it when you want to tell your beloved's heart something important. That's what grandmother used to say. Someday I would pass this ring to my granddaughter Anna. Maybe it would bring her true love, the kind I was only now beginning to understand. Love based on respect and freedom, not dependence and fear of loss. I went to the window. Rain was beginning outside, warm, spring rain, washing the city clean of dust and bringing freshness. How symbolic. This year had been such rain for me. It washed away everything superficial, illusory, false, leaving only what was real. Robert's betrayal, strangely enough, turned out to be not an end but a beginning. The beginning of a new life where I finally became the main character, not a supporting player. A life where I learned to value myself, my desires, my boundaries. I remembered our last meeting with my ex-husband. We were discussing the future birth of our granddaughter and he said, "You know, Val, only now do I understand what a treasure I lost." I didn't answer. There was no point in reopening old wounds or reveling in his belated repentance. Always was past. Now we were simply parents of common children and future grandfather and grandmother. And that was enough. I used to think happiness was a strong family, loving husband, successful children. And when the family collapsed, it seemed happiness was impossible. But life taught me an important lesson. Happiness isn't in other people, not in relationships, not in social roles. It's inside us. Happiness is the ability to marvel at a new day despite yesterday's tears. It's the skill of finding joy in small things. In the first sip of morning coffee, in a daughter's phone call, in a colleague's smile, in the scent of blooming lilacs. It's the freedom to be yourself without masks, without excuses, without fear of judgment. And most importantly, happiness is in accepting yourself, in loving that woman who looks at you from the mirror every morning, with all her wrinkles, gray hair, mistakes, and victories. Once Robert told me, "You're nobody without me." And I believed it. But now I know, I am a whole world. Complex, contradictory, but amazingly beautiful world, worthy of love and respect. first of all my own. I lay down in bed, covered myself with fresh blankets. Outside the window, rain was noisy, lulling the city to sleep. Tomorrow would be a new day with work, concerns, small joys and discoveries. The day after tomorrow, Michael would return. We'd go to the movies to see a French comedy. On Saturday, Sarah would come with her husband. We'd choose a stroller for the future granddaughter. And in a month, Tommy and I would fly to California for a week. He'd won the trip in a university lottery. Life goes on. And you know what? It's beautiful. Even after betrayal, even after divorce, even after everything that seemed unshakable crumbles. Falling asleep, I thought not about the past but about the future. About the granddaughter who would soon be born, about new projects at work, about possible travels with Michael, about books not yet read, about movies not yet made, about spring that was just beginning in nature and in my soul. Grandmother's ring lay in the jewelry box, waiting for its time. Maybe it would help Anna find true love, or maybe teach her the same thing it taught me. The main love in a woman's life is love for herself. And only when you truly love and value yourself will others love and value you. With this thought I fell asleep, peacefully, without anxieties or nightmares. A new life had already begun, and I was ready to live it fully, brightly, honestly, without fear and looking back at the past. Because the future promised to be interesting, and this future I was creating with my own hands. Thank you for listening to the story until the end. Subscribe to the channel and share this video with your friends and loved ones. It motivates us to keep working on new stories every day. Don't miss the next amazing story that's about to appear on your screen. We're very grateful to have you with us. See you soon.